Are you a Muslim who's married or looking to get married? I'm sure you've heard that more than 50% of Muslim marriages are ending in a divorce. Now that's unfortunate, but there's help out there. My name is Hina Mirza. I'm a registered psychotherapist with a specialization in Islamic counseling. And I've been working with hundreds of couples building healthy, happy, strong marriages. Sign up for the course that I just completed with Happy Strong Family to foolproof your marriage and make sure that you have all the right tools and all the right skills to lead a healthy, happy, strong life with your partner.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Happy Strong Family podcast. My name is Nadia A. I am the co-founder of Prep for Nine, an online e-school platform, and I will be your host for today. Today, I have with me a very special guest, Robina Khan. She is a dear friend of almost more than 30 years, mashallah. We grew up together in Ottawa, and she's a pharmacist by profession and has a very powerful story to share with us about her journey through cancer in the last couple of years, as well as becoming a mother through adoption and being a single Muslim woman growing up in Canada. And I'm so happy to have her here today. Welcome, Robina.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate this platform to share my story.
Alhamdulillah. I think it will be very beneficial to our viewers, and inshallah, you're going to be able to connect with them. I know that we have been talking about this for a couple of months now, right? Like back and forth about you wanting to share your journey and coming, and this being an amazing platform for you to start coming to this podcast. And one of the things we were talking about is that when we are thinking about our life, we usually have a timeline in place, and that, things are going to go in a certain sequential order because of what society tells us is the norm. But that doesn't always happen because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom and his plan. And your journey is one that is full of strength, full of perseverance, full of, the reconnection on your journey with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our title today is Finding Nour in life's darkest moments. And Nour is an Arabic word. It means light. It means guidance. It has a significant spiritual and intellectual meaning to it that actually means guidance and reconnecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's your daughter's name.
Yes, it is. That is very special.
So why don't we start there? Why don't we start with how your journey started?
Okay, so why did I choose to adopt? So all my life, I've always wanted to be a mom. That was an absolute for me. That's not something I ever questioned wasn't going to happen for me. So as I, as time went on, that door was closing for me. I was single, and it didn't seem it was going to happen the traditional way. I had hoped it would. And I had two choices. Either I continue sitting at this door that's closed, or I see what other options are available to me. And that's how adoption started. I started researching adoption and what my options were. And everything just opened up. Like it was just so smooth and easy for me. And in looking at adoption, like, there's a lot of, you look at the legal aspects, you look at where you can adopt. And my situation's unique because I'm a single woman, and domestic adoption wasn't feasible for me. And then the other part was looking at the sunnah and what our deen tells us about adoption and the care of orphans and abandoned children. So it was like it opened my eyes. I did not know how much blessing comes with adopting a child. Like, you are living, breathing charity with everything you do with that child. And knowing that, it just was like, how could I not take this path forward? Like, it was just, the blessing is so beautiful that, and if I could do it, why wouldn't I? So it was, my personal reasons for wanting to be a mother. And then, of course, fulfilling this, what seems like a forgotten sunnah.
Absolutely. So obviously this is a long journey. This is going to be any journey comes with its ups and downs, trials, tribulations. So I know that you hit a lot of obstacles. There were a lot of barriers. So what were some of those that you felt you'd want to share with our viewers?
Of course, being a single woman. So that's, it's difficult because everything, as a single parent, everything falls on you. So the financial, the physical care of the child, there is so much pressure as a single parent. Most people fall into that situation out of, divorce or whatever it may be. I was making the intention to be a single mom. I was choosing it. So there are a lot of worries that come with being a single mom. Of course, adopting a child, you wonder about the child's history, background, like what trauma they may bring as an adoptee, and how you would deal with that and how it would present. Each situation is very unique. I wanted to adopt a child who is a little older. I wanted a toddler. And, for instance, my daughter spent 2 years of her life, the first 2 years of her life, in an orphanage. So it was what would I see because of what she's gone through. So that's a concern. And the other part of it is bonding. Would I bond with a child that isn't biologically mine? Because the traditional way is you have a child, it looks like you, it has your mannerisms or whatever it may be. So I always had this doubt in my mind that I would be able to bond with a child that wasn't biologically mine. And then, of course, there is the aspect of Islamic fiqh surrounding adoption. Would I be able to meet those requirements? Like, it is something that's very important to be aware of. And I wondered if I had adopted a boy and he hit puberty, how would that play out in my life? So there's all these aspects. So those were the main challenges that I faced.
So let's talk about the one that you just mentioned about mahram.
Yes.
And what if, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had put a boy that you would have adopted. So what did you do? Because you went in prepared. You knew that this might be the case.
Yes.
And you weren't going to, say no to a child because of their gender. So
Yes.
How did you prepare yourself for it, or what steps did you take?
So that was a tough one because, you don't want to do anything that could hurt yourself or hurt that child. Like, you want to adhere to the guidelines that we're told that we must follow. So I did a lot of research with regards to that. So I consulted some religious leaders in the community, asked them, like, if this is the case, how do I manage this situation? There's a wonderful lecture on YouTube. Omar Suleiman talks about in very detail the fiqh, jurisprudence of adoption, and answers questions that people have with regards to, a child coming into your home and hitting puberty and what that looks like for your family and how you manage that. So with that one, I did my research. I came to a place where I was comfortable with the sacrifices and the challenges that I would meet in that regard, and understanding, like I just spoke about, the virtues of adoption, like that blessing will come with some challenges. And I was willing to accept that. Like, nothing difficult, nothing beautiful is going to come without some difficulty.
Exactly. And this is another Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guiding you and opening doors for you, that even this difficult thought that many people have that usually shy people away from adoption, about this mahram issue, because they have kids of their own from before, or, like a husband and a wife, for example, adopting a girl, then what's going to happen with the husband being in the house and the girl, those kind of issues. But you had reached a comfortable place by doing your own research. And what about when you went to the orphanage? You were telling me that, because obviously that was the first time, so you noticed how many children were there needing a home, and the probably ratio to people coming in to adopt versus the amount of children in the orphanage is not a balanced ratio.
So I chose international adoption because that was the best option for me. and I found a country that was very encouraging for single women to adopt. So and that country had orphanages. That's where children who were abandoned or orphaned were kept. And I did see lots of children there. And I think it's one of the, we talk about adoption and it's a sunnah, is we have to recognize in our ummah, we have likely the most number of orphans and abandoned children. Just thinking about what's happened in Gaza over the past more than a year, and what's happened in the past, like say 10 years around the world, in the Muslim world. So Allah has given us this opportunity to fulfill a sunnah. There is, of course, I understand not everyone can undertake this. But if it's something that people are interested in, it's certainly something to consider.
Right. And not only did you consult religious leaders, but also the best advice is to get from people who have adopted, right?
Yes.
Which is why you're doing this as well, to put your story out there so that if anyone is thinking about adopting, that they can always, contact you during this podcast or after this podcast and reach out, because there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of legal process that you have to go through, not just here in Canada, but also overseas, and you're juggling everything. So it can become overwhelming very, very fast. And I think we are, because of this is 2 years you've been doing, you had to wait 2 years. Right?
Yes, it was
almost
a 2-year process.
And there's so many steps, and I don't think we can cover those all.
No, it's really, it's quite, it's detailed. There's a lot. And once again, doing it as a single woman, like I didn't have a partner to go through those steps with. So it was, but alhamdulillah, like it went, I've forgotten about it. Like, people say after they've given birth, they forget about that once they see their child. It's the same. Like I've forgotten about all those, difficult moments that I had to go through.
But were there a lot of people that you could talk to, like when it comes to adoption?
Yes.
Did you find that it was easy to find people to discuss this with and share their experience?
I engaged like online communities of other Canadians who've adopted, and it was extremely helpful. So to hear that other people had adopted and what they went through and their experience and their very truthful, frank experience about the good and the bad of it, inspired me, because I'm like, well, if they were able to do it and they're on the other side of it where they're now, mashallah, with their family, why couldn't I do it? Like I can do it. It's possible. It's like anything in life. Any goal you have, once you see someone else achieving it, you know that it's achievable and it's something that you could do. So I reached out, I engaged with people. People love to share their stories. Like it's, and they want to help. So I had so much information just from that.
Okay. Yeah. And what would you do when you hit a roadblock? Because I know a few times we would talk on the phone and you'd tell me where you were in the journey, and then you'd say like, okay, this just happened and that's okay. I'm going to figure it out. And so what was your go-to? Like, I know you made a lot of dua and
so I think just going back to when I was thinking about adoption, when it was just a curiosity for me, it was Ramadan 2021, and I remember making so much dua for this to open up to, and so I relied on that heavily throughout the process. And I just knew, like, there was something inside me that knew that it was going to be okay. So whatever difficulty that arose, whether it was legal, whether it was doubts in my mind about whether I could do this or not, I just knew that it was going to be okay. Like there was never a moment that I thought it wasn't going to happen. So there was just this trust in Allah. There was this tawakkul that, I'm going to be okay. This is going to work out. So I think that really, that carried me through it.
Yeah. Even like the bonding, right? We don't, your expectations, you knew what to expect. You knew that it might be difficult.
Yes.
And you knew that it's not going to be organic, maybe right away. Maybe it would be, maybe it is for some people, but you knew that was eventually going to happen. So how long did the bonding take, or if that's the right question to ask?
It is. I mean, it does. Every situation is different. Depends on the age of your child. It depends on
every case is different.
Every case is different.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, I think it took about 6 months to feel fully bonded with my daughter. Like, she was 2.5 when I had custody of her. So she's coming to me as like a full-grown toddler with, her own strong personality. And, she was scared. She was very scared. And what's unique about her is that she came from an orphanage. So she was accustomed to multiple caregivers. She wasn't accustomed to having one solid caregiver. So with me, I think there was this hesitation to bond with me. And anytime someone would come into the house, whether it was the the housekeeper or we'd go out, she would always try to bond with other females. And I thought that was very interesting, but that was her trying to protect herself.
Yeah.
Like, because she knew that's what she had to do for 2.5 years, was to bond with caregivers to get her needs met.
Yeah.
So,
but and you lived overseas a little bit with her.
Yeah.
Right?
So
where she's from. Yeah.
Yeah. So I lived for, it was roughly 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 months with her.
Okay.
And it was,
and mashallah, now she is your daughter.
yeah,
Mashallah.
she is.
The bond is amazing.
The bond. So that's the other thing. People, they're not sure if they're going to feel bonded to their child because it's not biologically their child. I could not imagine loving a child more than I love her. I don't think that's even possible. Like the way I feel for her, what I would do for her, what she's done for me. So now I don't have, when people have that concern, and then you make dua and Allah will put love in your heart and love in your child's heart, and that connection will grow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think
because we've heard this is sometimes an issue when couples are adopting, right? One couple might have this concern, which sort of stalls the process because they're afraid that this might happen.
They're afraid that this child they might not feel like this child is theirs, so to speak. So it's a matter of working through that. Like it is difficult. I do empathize with that feeling. I went through that as well. But now being on the other side, I'm like, I can't imagine any of my doubts or challenges that
life without her
perceived them stopping me from being her mom and adopting her.
Yeah.
It's
an amazing story, mashallah. You're amazing. So now you are overseas, things are going really well, and you're making your trek back to Canada.
Yes.
And she's now with you, and you're starting your new life together, you and Nour, right?
Yes.
In Ottawa. So tell us, how did life take a turn?
So I spent 2 months with her overseas. It was a transition period. It was just the two of us. And it was really like, it was tough. Like I was a new mom. I was by myself in a foreign country. But I needed that period of me and her and us getting to know each other. So then it takes about 2 months. And in my situation at that time and place, it was a 2-month wait to receive her visa to travel back to Canada with me. So when I got back, it was a few weeks of settling in to life in Canada. Mashallah, I have a big family, lots of brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews. So, she was meeting her family, and it was a few weeks of getting into a routine and a rhythm. I was on parental leave, I had plans for the summer. I had so many plans for her and me in the summer. And then I finally, after we settled in, it was wonderful. Like we had I'm like, life was good for at least a couple of weeks. But then Allah had other plans. So I was diagnosed 3 months to the day of when I received custody of her. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So that was a shock, like disbelief, complete disbelief. And,
the timing, you probably were like, what is this timing?
Yeah, of course. I was like, I waited all my life to be a mother. And now that I am a mother, I'm a few months into it, and it was a difficult journey to get here. Now I'm diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm like, this can't be happening to me. Like there was so much, like, it's hard. Like there's a lot of emotions, and there's anger. So I went through the stages of grief, essentially. There's anger, like, how could this happen? Like, why is this happening to me? And it's not that I'm ungrateful for the plan, Allah's plan. It's
not that you don't have tawakkul.
No.
But those are natural human feelings.
Yes.
When you are diagnosed with something so big.
Yes, and we're human, and we're meant to feel these things and to question things.
And now you're no longer thinking of yourself.
No, not at all. So, I had the anger, I had the anxiety, the negotiation, I would just make dua. I'm like, Allah, just give me enough healthy years to raise her till she reads it. It's really emotional. So like then I would negotiate that. And eventually I got to a place of acceptance. I was like, okay. And you know, once I accepted, like this is what I'm going through right now. This is what's going to happen to me. I'm going to treatments, all the rest. Then I was able to move through it a little easier. But it was not about me. Like when I was diagnosed, it was like, she had already lost her parents, and now she's with me, and I'm like, I could not imagine leaving her. Like, and I could not imagine me not being healthy for her and strong for her. So that was just such an emotional journey for me. So just processing the diagnosis, like as you can see now, even when I think back to it, it is really, it's hard. I'm like, that timing and all the rest. But once I accepted it, once I was able to come to a point where, alhamdulillah,
this is what it is. And
this is,
let's move forward. You started, now is the acceptance phase.
Yes.
And you have your pharmacist, so you are able to navigate the healthcare system a little bit. So how did that come in handy, I guess?
So so I am in healthcare, and so you just understand how things move in the healthcare system. You have a little bit more knowledge about how things are and how to engage in the healthcare system. It was so important for me to be an advocate for myself. So I always, and I've tell patients this that I work with, your physician has hundreds, if not thousands, of patients on their roster. You are just responsible for yourself. So you need to be your strongest advocate. I am very proactive. I went into problem solving mode. And I also understood, and this is also for anyone who's diagnosed with any illness, that you are living the condition. You are the expert in that condition, because you know how that disease is affecting you. You know how it's impacting your mental, spiritual, physical well-being more than anyone, more than any practitioner could. They're the experts when it comes to the treatments and the surgeries and all of that stuff. But you need to understand, when you walk into your doctor's office, you're the expert. You're going to express yourself and empower yourself by telling yourself that. So that's what I did. I problem solved through it. There was a longer wait time in the city, in Ottawa. That's where I reside. So I ended up coming to Toronto for my surgery. And it was a lot of, that summer, it was just a blur, because it was
a lot of back and forth. I remember you were coming to Toronto almost sometimes twice a week, you said?
Yes. For tests, for appointments. And it was just, I was running on adrenaline. It was a really interesting time. And alhamdulillah, I got through it. And, but I wasn't okay with waiting indefinitely for an appointment for surgery in Ottawa. I knew that this is what I had to get done. And, that's what I did.
Yeah. And I know that, mashallah, you come from a very big family.
Yes.
You have, lots of brothers and sisters, nieces, nephews that are grown up now too. And so you had a strong support system there. And then I know your friends and siblings would come back and forth with you sometimes. And your friends here were also part of your support system. But what other support did you feel you needed outside of that? Or was that enough? Or did you feel like...
It was enough in some ways, and sometimes it was enough. Like, it was, like you said, I have mashallah, a big family. I have a really strong friend group. They were very supportive throughout. Like, I had a meal train going, people coming and visiting me, like taking me to my chemo appointments. And it was like, I was overwhelmed.
Taking care of Nour.
Taking care of Nour.
Stepped in to do that.
Yes. And even when I was in Toronto for my surgery, like you were there, and it was overwhelming like that. Like, I was immensely grateful for that. And there is also a sunnah that to visit the sick. And I always understood it from the other side of, like, me visiting someone who is sick and the blessings that would bring me. And now I understand why. It's really how that made me feel to know
Yeah.
that people were there. They would come and drop off food and chat with me. And it's a dark time. It's a dark place that you're in. And just to have that, and not to feel isolated I'm like grateful for that. So
Mhm.
what was lacking within our community was the support within like our masjids and within our community. There was nothing available to people, to at least women who were
So you're
diagnosed.
looking for like support groups.
Support groups. So there's of course support
Of
groups
course, yeah.
through the the Cancer Foundation,
Mhm.
and those were helpful. I attended those.
Did you feel like did you fit in, so to speak, or did you feel there was a lot of representation being a Muslim?
It's not as
Pakistani
diverse.
woman? Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunately not as diverse. They do a really great job offering like classes, activities, sessions, etc. So it was really quite, it was good. I accessed all of those, but there's something to be said about being able to speak about your condition with people who have gone through it, because like I could tell you,
Mhm.
this is how I felt, and you can
Sympathize with
sympathize
it.
with me, but you truly don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
And to be able to speak to other women who have gone through this, I would, you know, you know, very important. It was extremely important. And, you try to access things online and support groups and ask questions. And, but there's that connection of seeing someone, of meeting with someone is extremely important. So, no, unfortunately, there wasn't anything available in the Muslim community. There is a wonderful virtual support group
Yeah.
led by a Muslim cancer coach in Toronto, and that was really helpful. Like being able to discuss your disease through the lens of your faith, and it was something that you're not able to do in other spaces. So, yeah, that was lacking in our community.
Mhm. And that's, I think, where you feel that you want to do something, right? You want to start these support groups. You want to get in touch with other masajids and tell them like this is really, really necessary, because
Yeah.
people are going through this almost essentially alone,
Yes.
without the support that they need.
So that's, yeah, absolutely. Like I would love to, like I'm working on an initiative to have a support group in person.
Mhm.
And it's going to take some time. And it's something new. What's important is that the opportunity that we have within our community to disseminate health information, like there's something about faith-based interventions that really can impact health outcomes. And the way we view health and is through the lens of religion. Like taking care of your health is a religious duty. So to be able to have that support within our community and culturally sensitive and approach to it as well would be just immensely beneficial.
Mhm. We'll
Yeah.
talk about more about what you plan on doing, inshallah, and like how you're starting to share your journey, and why you're doing that. And I think like you've outlined a lot about the
Mhm.
importance of it. But now we can't forget that Nour is still in the picture, right? Like you are
Yes.
going back and forth, back and forth. You have surgeries, you have chemo, you had radiation. It was nonstop for almost 1 year.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Nour was only still, she's still
Yeah.
a baby. She's like 3 years old now, right?
Yes.
So how did you manage that as well?
Oh, so I managed it. Like I didn't balance it. I was like, there was no way that I was going to be able to be, a full-time hands-on mom with her at that time. I wasn't able to. So I had to come to a place where I was okay just knowing that she was safe
Mhm.
and that she was nurtured, and that's it. Like I couldn't go any further than that. I couldn't, and it was hard because I wanted to do things with her. And, she needed, I felt like she deserved more. Like she didn't deserve a sick mom. Like that really bothered me. And that's something I had to um, be okay with. Like, this is temporary. It's not going to be forever. And it was, I looked at the timing as well at that point. So when I was with Nour and I kept her home throughout my treatments, I didn't want her in daycare because I was immunocompromised. So it would be long days, just me and her. And, one of the, she was, the timing was perfect. So at first I questioned, like, why is this happening to me when it's happening to me when I have my daughter? And then when I just, how she got me through it, I wouldn't have been able to manage without her.
Yeah.
Like and that's when I realized, I'm like, I needed her before I was diagnosed. And she needed me to go through this because alhamdulillah, now she has the healthiest, strongest version of me. I'm like mentally more resilient. My priorities have shifted in ways that I didn't think would. And so I needed her, and she needed me to go through this. So now I'm like, the timing was perfect. Like, I don't question that anymore. And it's only after, like, when you're going through it, you don't think of it, but it's only after you step back and you're like, wow, that's why it happened the way it did. Like, it's pretty, it's just this, this epiphany you have.
She was the light.
She was the light in my life, and she was what I needed. It's, when she first came to me, she was scared. She was scared of water and all these little things. And I would always tell her, I'm like, Nour, don't worry, mama's here. Like, that was my way of comforting her, to always tell her that. I'm like, Nour, don't worry, mama's here. Mama's with you, to comfort her. And, I think it was a few months after I was diagnosed. It was probably after my surgery. I was on the phone with one of my friends and I was just breaking down. I was sobbing. Like, I just didn't know, like, I was sobbing, I was crying, and Nour was there. And I also became comfortable crying in front of her. Like, I didn't want to, but it's something I had to do. And she just comes up to me and she's like, Mama, don't worry. Nour's here. And I was like, oh, my heart. Like, that was when I realized, I'm like, I needed her.
So the timing was perfect.
This. Yeah.
It couldn't have been any more perfect, because I know usually you were telling me that most adoptions happen, a woman is diagnosed with cancer and then she can sometimes not have children, and then she goes on the adoption journey. And for you, it's complete opposite.
Exactly. So yeah, it's not unheard of for someone who's undergone cancer treatment that's impacted their fertility to then adopt. But for me, it was the opposite. Like, I had the adoption and then the cancer came. And, part of this story was, like, before I traveled to adopt her, I did have a suspicious lump. I had it, a mammogram done, and I was called back again. And the day that I was scheduled to travel, the results came back of the second mammogram, and I was told that, it was less than 5% chance of malignancy. So I had comfort, and I'm like, okay, that's not so bad. And when I called the hospital, the booking office, they said, this is nothing to worry about. Like, we're not going to book you in for a biopsy for at least 8 weeks. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm okay. And when I traveled and when I was, overseas, I decided to just consult a doctor there. And I did that. And they told me, oh, no, this looks like greater than 95% cancer. So I was confused. I did a biopsy there and it came back negative.
Wow.
So I was like, subhanAllah. When I think back to it, I'm like,
came back negative.
Because if it was positive and I'm by myself and, with my daughter, I can't turn back on the adoption. Like, I'm there, right? They're saying, how would I have dealt with that? Like, so I feel like Allah protected me by that false negative. And, I was upset afterwards. I'm like, when I found out it was positive, I'm like, why, how did they not pick up on it earlier or sooner? So I was upset, but then I'm like, you know what? It was meant to happen that way. And, that protected me and that let me focus on my daughter without that stress. Yeah.
Oh, SubhanAllah. So, I wanted to ask you what advice you would give. Let's go back to adoption for a second, because both of us know that there are so many women out there who want to become mothers, and that timeline isn't being met. The one that society has told us is the norm. So, what advice would you give them?
Oh wow! I mean, that's
And then we'll talk about couples. So just right now we're
single
talking about
women-
single women.
Okay,
Like,
so it's
like you didn't do it till later. Like we
Yes.
won't discuss our ages here, but you didn't do it till later.
because I thought that it was going to happen the traditional way.
Yeah.
And, not that I have any regrets, but if I were to have one, I would have done this sooner. Like, why did I wait? It's such a beautiful thing. Like, I can't even count the blessings that I have with her, like what she's brought into my house, and into my life. I would to engage with people who have gone through it, like contact someone who has gone through it, reach out to me. Like I just think you need to listen to someone else's story, and have them be a sounding board for you.
Sounding board, because sometimes you're just going through the cons in your head. Right?
Yes.
Like, okay, no, this is not going to happen. But there's no one to be your soundboard.
Exactly.
And be like, no, but what about this? Like, to give you another perspective through another lens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need that. And it's also the importance of like recognizing that sometimes we put up barriers that really aren't barriers that we can absolutely work through. And, we sometimes make things more difficult for ourselves than we need to. So, any woman who's single and who's like, you know what, I'd love to be a mother. Like, it's a very natural feeling for women. Like, there's some women that are okay with not going down that path, and, that's fine as well. But for those who want to be a mother and feel like they need a partner to do it and it's not working out that way,
or that if they do go through the adoption, then maybe they've closed the door of finding a partner.
Exactly. And no, that should not be a reason for you to not adopt if you can and you want to. Or there's women who are widowed and they have children and they're single, but they'd also like more children, add more children to their life. It's not easy, but it's not impossible. So, we talked about the challenges of being a single mom. There are wonderful support groups out there for single mothers. We don't always know how to access them. And that's a matter of just, talking to people, engaging with other people who've gone through it. So my first piece of advice is to any woman who's interested in adoption is to talk to someone who's gone through it.
Right. And to even, I think you were telling me that you really looked into the seerah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and you really found stories that resonated with you through the adoption process, knowing, the Sahabas that were yatim. The Prophet Sallallahu had lost both his parents as well. And you said those stories resonated with you a lot.
Yeah, very much so. And like learning about that, like learning about something that I didn't know about, and the blessings of it was just eye-opening. And I don't know if everyone knows about that. I don't know if we emphasize or talk about that enough. Like it's
because usually I hear about it's a challenge. It's because of this issue, because of the inherent, because of the mahram is the biggest one, right?
Yes.
Like, how do we do this, or what happens after this age? Or also, you were mentioning this as well, the not calling the adopted child, not calling the adopted parents by like mom or dad or whatever, those kind of issues that might cross your mind.
Yeah. So there's a lot of challenges. And once again, but like Islam is a religion of ease. And so
it really is.
It really truly is. So like any challenge, any of those things I thought of that would be challenges, there was some way to facilitate that. There was some way to manage that. And it wasn't impossible. Like it really wasn't. So when I looked into that and I read about it and I consulted a couple of religious leaders about, specific questions about like, how do I do this? Like, if I, and there's ways around it. Like it's quite detailed. And it also has to be, you have to be comfortable with it.
And you're going to share all that too, right? Like you're going to, inshallah, once I think you have a blog that you just started.
Yes.
What's it called?
It's called Cup of Rope.
I love it.
So I just started, I want to go into a more detailed account of my cancer journey, sharing resources for women that are going through it, and also the adoption journey. And, I think it's really special because I want this also to be something that Nour can look at when she gets older and be like, okay, that's what my mom went through. Like, imagine like knowing that's part of her story now. So I really wanted to record that.
Yeah.
And my inspiration for doing it is I want to be able to give what I needed during that time, whether my cancer journey and the adoption journey. I want to be able to have resources for women that are struggling and going through it, and a place to look. And there's lots of things out there, but I think everyone needs something different. And inshallah, I hope that I can achieve that.
Yeah. I think we have a few questions as well from the audience.
Yes, we do. Jazakallah khair. So I do have the blog up here. I'm displaying it on the screen. So inshallah, sorry, it was. Oh, I lost sound here for a second, but I think the audience can hear me. So it's cupofro.blog is the website, I
Yes,
believe.
correct.
And then also you have an Instagram channel, which is cup of underscore row.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to hand it back to you for a second because I got to fix the sound. I can't hear myself.
Okay, no problem.
So I'll just let you guys talk.
No problem.
briefly,
So this is the blog,
back to the questions.
right? This is the blog that this is your Instagram handle,
Yes.
the Cup of Row. So you'll be sharing a lot on there as well. And then the
Mhm.
blog, that's the Cup of Row as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the blog. Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's hard to put yourself out there and
really
to
is, yeah.
share something so personal. And so I was hesitant about it for quite some time. And I think
I
it was
know because we've been talking about this for
yes
months. I've been hounding you to let's go,
Let's
come
do
on.
it.
And
I
I knew it
know.
was in you, but
Yeah.
everything has to be according to when you are ready.
Yes, with the right timing. And I just I'm not one to share a lot on social media and whatnot. So I am stepping out of my comfort zone by doing it. And the reason is because I really want people to see the story, to hear the story. And I find that, that is my reason for doing it. I really would love to reach people who need this.
Yeah. And with the adoption and the hesitations that people have, we have to remember we have challenges with our own biological children as well.
Absolutely.
Right. This is something that we know is going to happen regardless.
Yes.
And so it balances out. Like, it's the same if you adopt a child versus your biological child, you're going to have the same trials and tribulations, and we are taught to overcome them. And we know that after hardship, there is always going to be ease, inshallah.
Yeah, and absolutely. There's always that blessing in like that difficult time you go through. There's so much blessing. And, I think about, when I was going through this, when I was first diagnosed, and it was a really confusing time and place for me. I was, referring to stories in the Quran and like the Sunnah and our Hadith. And one of the stories that always stood out to me is that of Prophet Ayub. And I think about that, and I thought about that a lot. Like he was blessed with health, wealth, children, and then he lost it all, and he had years of sickness. And one of the points, I don't know the exact wording, but was that he acknowledged how many years of blessings he had, and it was 70 or 80 years, and that he was like, but I've only been sick for 7 years. Like, how can I not be grateful for that?
Yeah.
And so, and I think about that. I'm like, yes, alhamdulillah, I have had years of health, and this is, a hiccup, so to speak. This is a difficulty. And in that difficulty, it's transformed me. And, being here today is part of that transformation, and sharing this journey is.
Yeah. Apologies for that. Jazakallah khair. So I'm back. So yeah, we are sharing the Instagram handle and the blog on the screen. I'll also add it to the description. So alhamdulillah, we've had a lot of comments and questions coming in. So we'll read a few of them, and I'll do the live ones first, just in case they're still watching. So we have a comment here. Jazakallah khair for sharing. So important. Allahu Akbar. MashaAllah. So it's a test from Allah. Trust me, you are going to survive. So yeah, alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair for all the comments. Here's another one. SubhanAllah, you are so strong, so insightful that our trials and tests from Allah is exactly what we need to create a better version of ourselves for us and our loved ones. So true, and thanks for sharing. Dr. Rashid is watching. Obviously, he's a great contributor to the show. MashaAllah, Dr. Rashid gets 1 million Instagram views and he has no idea, subhanAllah. His clips have gone viral, multiple clips, and he, mashallah, has no idea. May Allah reward him for all his efforts. So, mashallah, he's reminding us that, mashallah, Zaid bin Harith was adopted by the best human being, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You are so strong, mashallah. You and Nour are so fortunate to have each other, alhamdulillah. And here's a question that came in. Salam, often wonder when the right time to adopt, older/younger. How did you navigate this period to decide when? What took you from an idea to a decision?
Okay. So, I talked about how I was waiting for it to have children the traditional way. So I waited. So I was older when I adopted. And it wasn't, oftentimes we come to a point in our lives and decisions are made for us. Like, this door was closing. So it was like, okay, what are my options? And that's how this curiosity of adoption came forth. So I don't think.
Did you know someone who had adopted, or it just kind of was an idea planted in your head?
No, nobody. I didn't not know a single person who had adopted. I went online and started to find groups of people who had adopted, looking for single women who had adopted, and I did find people.
So you just kind of woke up and was like, what about this?
Yes. And then I did a lot of research about, children in the foster system here. And, and watched documentaries about adoption. It was heartbreaking. Like, I couldn't shake that feeling, like, of they're vulnerable and all kids want is a home and safety and love. And so that's how it happened. So I didn't really make a decision, okay, I wanted to do it at this time in my life.
Or you weren't someone that, like, from a young age wanted to adopt?
I've always had a very, one of my strongest values is fulfillment through service and through, So, like, I've worked in the humanitarian space as well. So that's something that is like means a lot to me and makes me feel very fulfilled. So I knew I wanted to do something that would serve. And this is likely why I was drawn to adoption. Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. So a few more comments coming in. You are a role model, strong and amazing mother and woman, mashallah. May Allah bless you and Nour. Ameen. There is another comment here and some questions. Mashallah, you are so strong and such an inspiration. May Allah bless you and your daughter abundantly. Mashallah, jazakallah khair for sharing. Is it an expensive process for adoption? Is there government support?
Okay, so
we want to,
so it's a bit complicated. So there is public domestic adoption, which you would go through your local Children's Aid Society. I have a friend who went that route, and it was not any expense to her. The wait times may be longer, and it's something that if you're interested to consider, reaching out to like your local Children's Aid to find out what the process is.
And I think you have to foster first, right?
No, you don't have to foster first. The other option is fostering is another option. I looked into that as well, but I definitely wanted to have a child to raise.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's private domestic adoption. There is a cost to that, and then there's international, which international private, which is what I did. It is costly. There is a cost to it, and then it's not impossible though. Like, once again, that's also a challenge. I don't think I touched upon is the financial, and so it is a matter of just prioritizing, and Allah will open doors for you. Yeah. So there is a cost to the private adoption, and there is the option of going public.
I think it is costly. It's like, we're not going to put a number on it right now, but people can find out for that themselves. But again, you said we save up for many other things.
Yes, we save up.
We use our money for many things.
Yeah.
It
comes and goes. So yeah.
So it was a follow-up question, I think, from the same person. If you don't mind me asking, were you working full-time? Is it possible to navigate the adoption process with full-time work?
Yeah, I was working full-time. Like I said, being single, like I do work full-time. So I was able to navigate it while working full-time. and I was able to also take parental leave while
Yeah.
when I went to adopt her, and I had a good chunk of time off with her for that. So yeah, it's like a project. Like once I started it, like my evenings and weekends. So yeah, it is possible to do it while you're working full time.
Jazakallah khair. So someone writing in, mashallah, so proud of you. You are a great mother, and Allah make it easy. May Allah make ease for you every step of the way. Ameen. Question came in. It seems like by sharing your story, you will obviously let your daughter know right from the start she is adopted and not hide from her. Was that you did this decision versus telling them later in life?
So I think it comes down to the fiqh of adoption. Like you need to be transparent with your child. They need to know that where they came from. And so I absolutely wanted to respect that. And I think it's important to also note that my daughter, her ethnicity is different from mine. So visibly we look different. It's so from a very, I just want her to know her story and be proud of it. Like I don't want her to be of any shame that she's adopted. Like it's a beautiful thing. Like I was so intentional about wanting to be a mother, and I, like, so to speak, I chose her. Like Allah brought us together, but like, so I tell her this story. Yes, Mama saw you when you were this age, and she brought you back home, and she loves the story, and she tells it to me, and she thinks it's great, and I want her to be proud of it. So that's the reason why I told her from a young age, and she also looks different from me, so I want her to know that okay, she came from another country. And yeah, so that's my reason.
So I wanted to, this question reminds me of something about people asking you about her story.
Okay.
What was her story? Where did she come from? Does she know her parents? This and that. Like, and that's, how do you feel about that?
I understand people are curious. They want to know. I mean, I may feel that way if I meet someone, or if I had met someone who was adopted, I might want to know, like, just out of curiosity. However, it is her story to tell. It's not mine. So I just kind of dance around it a little bit.
It's a boundary a little bit.
It is a boundary, like set that up. And I do know a lot about her story, and I haven't shared that with anyone. Like I have it in writing in case anything happens, like she can have access to it. But when she's old enough, she can access more information. And it's for her to tell. It's for her to tell when she's comfortable saying it. And it's not a matter of, being private or whatnot. I'm protecting her. Yeah. She might not want people to know the details.
Right.
So yes.
Jazakallah khair. So this is incredible. May Allah reward you for sharing your experiences, offering strength, and a beautiful example. Love you, Ro. Your daughter Nour is indeed a light in your life. Alhamdulillah. And then we had some questions come in from Instagram earlier too. So let me see those ones again. So there was one that was saying, was there negative reaction from the community when pursuing adoption as a single woman? How did you deal, if so?
I did hear some comments like, why don't you just get married and have a child? So it didn't bother me. Like I never felt like this was something to be, I was a failure. I couldn't do it the traditional way or whatever it may be. I was like, this is Allah's plan, and wow, what a beautiful plan it was. So I'm sure there's some negative reactions, and but it didn't bother me. Like I'm very comfortable and confident in my decision to adopt and my ability to be a single mom and parent her and give her what she needs. That it wasn't something that impacted me.
Right. It's usually a lack of knowledge, right? A place of not knowing. They might be coming from a good place, or
So I mean, I can understand how that may deter people. Like, what are people going to think, and how is this going to be perceived? But the only
people
person
will always think.
They will always think, and the only person to be concerned with is the praise of Allah. So if you have that, like, who cares?
Nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. So another question was, biggest misconception, misinformation you had about adoption that changed as you learned the process?
Ooh. I feel like all the challenges that I had put forth, especially with the fiqh of adoption, like um, I think that when I researched that, I felt like I just had more knowledge and proper knowledge, like not just from people telling me.
Otherwise, it was
Yeah. Otherwise, I
hearsay,
had these assumptions, and so I think that was likely the biggest misconception,
And the Umar
misinformation.
Suleiman, the Sheikh Umar Suleiman or Imam Umar Suleiman video you were talking about.
Yeah, I'm
It's
gonna
just
link it to my Instagram.
okay.
It's a longer one, but it's so beautiful, and it was the only one that I could find.
Wow.
So unfortunately, like I hope there's more of it to come.
Right.
But yes.
Yeah, so I think if a lot of masjid folks listen, so I think this is an opportunity to have some topics that specifically discuss this, because it is lacking. Like I haven't seen it much in discussions, like someone I could go to learn and ask questions. So
especially with cancer, it is you feel like it's happening almost, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect everyone, but almost in every household. There's a story of cancer.
Now, yes.
And then usually you don't see that person or know what they're going through. And imagine if they are able to come to a monthly meeting, weekly meetup, and just, get it off their chest, because sometimes patients also feel like they are burdened to the family. And, then that also stops them from their healing process, because they're worried about not only just curing themselves, but also the impact that they're having on their loved ones through this illness, right? And there's that guilt and the emotional burden that comes with it.
Oh yes, absolutely. All those feelings, everything that you described, I felt. So and there's also this, cultural sensitivity that's really important that the masjids can offer and provide for people. And there is, a lot of women, like sometimes, they don't want to talk about their cancer because they might be embarrassed or ashamed. And like when I was first diagnosed, I thought, what did I do to get this? And like so I feel like being able to talk about it would really help those people that are going through it.
Inshallah, yeah. And I think you've reached out, right? You're starting to reach out to different masajids and stuff.
Yes, within Ottawa.
So inshallah, we hope to see those groups come up. Yeah.
Yeah, inshallah, may Allah make it easy.
Ameen.
So there's a comment: your mental strength and resilience is so incredibly admirable. Thank you for sharing your story. So inshallah, we're approaching the top of the hour, so I'll pass it back to you now. Before I'll ask a question for myself. So selfishly, one of the reasons I do this week after week is just to learn how to behave, and not behave, but just how to like react to certain situations, because oftentimes people mean well, but some of the things that they do are sort of negative and might not be helping the situation, even though the intentions are there. So I'm very conscious to try to learn from people that have been through it. So from when it comes from a perspective of both adoption and cancer, what were maybe some of the things that community members said and or did that meant well, but it maybe it didn't have the same impact that they intended, and it maybe
that you wished more.
Yeah. So people say things that might not land in the way they intend to, and it's their intention is. It's not to hurt and not to be malicious in any way. I know with the adoption, I feel like when I tell people that Nour is adopted, like I don't hide it. I feel like some people will say, "Oh, you know what? She looks so much like you," and I'm like, I know they mean well. I know they're trying to give me some comfort and saying like, no one would even know your daughter's adopted. And I say, no, stop. I don't. It doesn't bother me that she doesn't look like me. She's mashallah, beautiful. And, she's still deeply a part of me, regardless if she looks like me or not. And I know they mean well. And nor am I ashamed that, I adopted her. Like, so I feel like, all you could say, and I think some of the most beautiful things I've heard are just people give me their blessings and saying things like, how beautiful it is that you two found each other in this life. Like, things like that I think those are important to hear. And also with the cancer, everyone's different. For me, I just needed someone to say, I'm sorry you're going through this. It's tough. I get it. And just, I'm there for you. Like, tell me what you need. I'm there for you. And just checking in. Like, you don't need to say too much. Just knowing that someone's there and that you could reach out to someone, it's really important. So
Yeah, sometimes people feel awkward, right? And so their
course.
awkwardness leads to some rambling that
yes.
is unneeded. So less
Yeah.
is more.
Less is more. Just saying, you know what? I heard you're diagnosed. Tell me what you need.
Yeah.
If you need anything, I'm here. Like my sending you prayers, du'as, like blessings. Like that's all. It's very simple. Like it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah. All right, that's
Okay, inshallah, we're approaching the top of the hour, so I'll pass it back to Sister Nadia to wrap it up. And
Jazakallah khair, you're amazing. I'm so glad we did this. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
I think you have so much to give to the community, and I look forward to all that is about to come through, even the dark times, the tough times, the positives that are now going to come out of this. And I'll be following your blog, inshallah, and I hope everyone else does as well. And that the reason why we did this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses it more, and you are a means of helping others, inshallah. You're the best.
Jazakallah for having me here. It means so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And we'll see you next time, inshallah.